This is the story of a girl named Pomni. Fascinating.
Day, box thoughts. Well, I guess my insane ponderings about a paranoid game piece mixed with some callous critiques of corporate commercialism wasn't enough for you guys, and you demanded more. Well, aren't you lucky? Cause I'm insane all the time. So, how's about we shift our focus to the second biggest bundle of nerves at the circus, the clown princess of Criminy herself, Pomni. Pomni is the most interesting case among the cast, being the newest fish in the pond and the rare breed of isekai star who actually wants out of her current situation. But the big question is, how did she get into her situation? What was this poor gal's life like before the big top? What's the meaning behind her Jester design and silly name? How did she get a hold of this old ADC computer in the first place? And what kind of role might she play in the ultimate release of all its trapped victims? Well, I've got a head full of cannons and nothing but time, so let's break down this Jester and the game that ingested her.
What are we doing?
Just wait for the black. There we go.
Pomni is a mentally mangled body horror half-pint with a 1,000-yard stare that's occasionally drawn by a kindergartner. Her design is that of a humanoid in a basic red, blue, and yellow Jester costume, with puffy pants, pale white skin, tufts of brown hair coming out of her pom-pom hat, mismatched eyelashes with one set on the top of one eye and one set on the bottom of the other, and pupils that apparently haven't loaded yet. She's extremely high-strung and fearful throughout the majority of the pilot, to the point where I thought that she was gonna abstract within the first 2 minutes of her being there. It's hard to tell if this nervousness is part of her IRL personality, or if she's just reacting to the situation. I mean, if I was just thrown into a glitch-ridden game with Admiral Eye Crunch as my MC, I'd be pretty terrified too. But I think that the sheer amount of freakouts, zone-outs, and breakdowns that she does throughout the story definitely does hint at her being a timid and shy girl IRL. Like maybe she was someone who was easily spooked, startled, and fear-ridden in her casual life, and then when she was placed in this out-of-body scenario where even the bravest of souls would be a little uneasy, her temperament went from everyday anxiety to nuclear fear, which is pretty much how I would describe this type of behavior. She's confirmed to have memories of putting on the headset and entering the circus, but like her fellow playmates, she can't remember her name. So King gives her a new one, Pomni, which if translated from Russian to English, actually means remember. So Pomni that fact for later, it's probably going to be important. As for her gateway to the game world, it's strongly implied that she entered the circus through means of this crusty, yellow PC setup, as it's shown both during her little office freakout and the final shot of the episode. Though notice that the computer itself looks very decrepit and worn down, while the office space around it looks perfectly fine. A little messy to be sure, but nowhere near as aged and ancient as the actual tech. Basically, this thing looks more out of place than Zooble on a best character list. You mother! Flip me off all you want, sweetheart. It's just fact. Now on the surface, there doesn't seem to be too much to Pomni yet. A one-note personality, a single-layered backstory, and the most straightforward and basic design of the cast so far. One could even call her generic. Well, you say generic, I say poetic. Because if you combine what we know about Pomni with some thematic outside research, we could have a character who might be even more tragic than Kinger. Let's piece it all together. One of the biggest questions I had towards Pomni in the pilot was, why a Jester? Why out of all possible avatars did the game make her look like that? Well, Jesters are a very interesting breed, mostly in terms of how public perception on them has changed over time. Nowadays, a lot of people tend to mesh Jesters and clowns together into one category, since they're both seen as general, silly entertainers. But if you look at how things were done in the olden days, that just wouldn't be fair. Jesters were actually very highly respected members of the royal court and the community. As their name suggests, Jesters would jest. They would tell jokes, sing songs, poke fun at the nobility in very smart and witty ways, kind of like old-timey stand-up comedians. Royals would also trust them with delivering important information and even showing up to battles to motivate the troops. Being a Jester was no laughing matter. Except when it was, which is all the time. However, this image of the Jester, from what I've read, is only half the puzzle. These guys are what's called artificial fools. Smart, high-functioning guys who are paid top dollar to be eccentric and cause laughter. But there is another breed of fool known as the natural fool. These were people with learning, social, and mental deficiencies. Some found it even hard to talk or do basic household tasks half the time. And nobilities would often keep them around, kind of like pets for their own amusement. Heck, back in the day, this practice was actually seen as positive because it's unlikely that these kind of people would be able to find work elsewhere, so at least we're giving them employment, right? Ugh. Now, I mentioned in my last video that the designs of the circus dwellers seem to be based on their deepest personal flaws and/or traumas, like with Ragatha, Gangle, and Kinger, for example. So it only makes sense for Pomni's look to be based on a personal trauma as well. And I believe that this kind of dichotomy between the two types of fools is the basis behind Pomni's strange Jester drip. Pomni is obviously living in a time long after the popularity of the Jester profession. And if you were to ask me what the equivalent of a Jester would be in today's digital age, I would actually say an online content creator. You know, Let's Players, reactionaries, live streamers, people who make jokes, sing songs, mock the medium they're playing, and even put on silly costumes and goofy voices to mixed results. And oftentimes, people who are very nervous and socially awkward like Pomni will try and create an online persona to get more comfortable about interacting with others. So I could totally see a shy little bean like her trying to become an artificial fool online, strengthening her social skills, meeting new people, and entertaining them with her jokes and charming personality. But because she's easily startled, not exactly great at improv, and just generally scared of how people might see her, she ends up making a fool of herself on camera, and most people who tune into her content tend to be laughing at her instead of with her. Like, hey, look at this girl, she'll freaking scream at anything, she can't even form proper sentences live, it's hilarious. She ends up getting pretty popular, but through being the butt of the joke instead of the teller of it. This kind of treatment later extends into her personal life, where she gets made fun of at her job and in most real-life situations, only making her more hesitant to interact with others face-to-face, if at all. And the only reason most people want to be around her or subscribe to her is for the humiliating yucks rather than anything else. So, in a twisted kind of way, Pomni could have gone from being an artificial fool to a natural fool, only being kept around for the amusement of others due to her abnormal behavior instead of her wit and intelligence. It's a sad way to imagine her real life, but one that definitely matches up with what we've been shown so far. Heck, one of my favorite minor details of her design is actually her disproportionate eyelashes, where one eye has them on top and the other one has them on the bottom. Imagine if this simple choice was meant to symbolize the polar opposite realities of how she wanted to be viewed versus how people actually view her, wishing to be on the top, but always ending on the bottom. Never the jester, always the jested. What a sad existence that would be for our poor protag. Or maybe they just made her a jester because it's cute and it would make for great merchandise. Speaking of which, be sure to comment, subscribe, and share. I have a certain debt to pay off and I kinda need the cash. Now I want to talk about the computer that was allegedly Pomni's ticket into the game. I already mentioned how drastically different it is compared to everything else around it, looking like something the ancient Egyptians would have used to play Minesweeper, but I also want to point out this strange setup that the compy is resting on. Look at how slapdashed and messy this is. We got the PC unit just resting on some boxes, papers all over the floor on the right, a mess of cables and power strips, a desk that looks way different from the cubicles we see throughout the office. This entire scene just screams thrown together at the last minute. As if somebody was eager to inspect the contents of a mysterious years-old machine that they found, and just use whatever was nearby in the room to set it up, hook it up, and then see what lies within.
Coincidence? No, not really.
I also want to point out that despite Pomni apparently entering the game through here, there are no traces of human life anywhere. Like no unconscious body or nothing. In my Kinger theory, I assumed that anyone who put on the headset would have their full body absorbed into the game, leaving no physical evidence behind. But as a lot of people pointed out, that seems a little far-fetched, even for a sci-fi horror concept like this one. So, I'm gonna amend it. Instead of the digital circus slurping up full human beings into cyberspace, I'll say that the original humans do still walk away from the game, but with their personality and memories completely taken away. Yeah, remember when I said that Kinger's game had a feature that scans the minds of players to create the perfect avatar for them? Almost like it was copy-pasting their likes and interests into the program? Well, because the game was glitchy and incomplete, instead of a copy-paste job, the users basically became victims of a sloppy cut-and-paste job. The game took the contents of their minds and created in-game characters as intended, but now the consciousness of that person is stuck inside the game, while the person on the other side has their mind completely wiped clean, allowing their physical bodies to move on, but without any recollection of who they are or who they were. And of course, because the game's all bugged out, a few pieces end up getting lost during the transfer, resulting in the circus folks remembering some things like the fact that they were once human, but forgetting other things like their names and such. This makes things a lot more realistic and believable, and the higher-ups don't have to file any missing person cases. Everyone wins! Except for them. Well, that's all fine and dandy, Mr. Fan, but there's still some loose ends to this tale. How did Pomni even acquire this computer? Does she have ties to CNA Productions at all? And if the victims of the digital circus merely got their minds wiped, then what became of their human counterparts? Well, buckle up, folks. It's time for the punchline to this sick joke. Pomni was a 25-year-old minimum wage beta tester working at the modern-day CNA studios. She's an extremely shy and nervous girl who would prefer to just get her work done and go home every day. But unfortunately, her life is not that simple. She's known around the office as the girl who gets easily scared by pretty much everything, a reputation she's earned mostly due to her previous online presence. Turns out that Pomni was once a Let's Player / streamer who tried to create a name for herself on the net, in an attempt to become a little braver and maybe meet some like-minded people. But she only wound up making a stuttering, screaming fool of herself, and when the videos got shared around and became fairly popular, the majority of people simply tuned in to laugh at this poor girl's ineptitude, including some of her future co-workers. And when she eventually got a position at the game company and folks started to recognize her, she became the constant target of bullying and ridicule in the workspace. Pranks, jokes, laughs at her expense, and as time goes on, they get more and more creative with their tricks, like going from simple plastic bugs on lunches to programming Easter eggs and jump scares into games that Pomni is meant to beta test. Heck, sometimes they just make whole fake games to frighten her. Like maybe one of those screamer mazes you'd find on Newgrounds back in the day, then they'd film her reactions and save it for later chuckles. Pomni is obviously tired of this constant bullying, but she finds it hard to really speak up and say anything about it. Her online account was one of the few times she managed to push through her fear and try something new, and it only wound up blowing up in her face. So why say anything ever again? Why do anything bold ever again? Just take it and move on. Eventually, one employee gets the chance to pull the ultimate prank on little Pomni. For a while now, he's been talking to this rich guy who's the son of one of the company's higher-ups and is basically set for life. He was a big fan of Pomni's videos back when she was posting them, and always got a good giggle from her paranoid behavior. So much so that he would actually pay employees in the modern day to shoot videos of Pomni panicking and post them online just so he could continue getting entertainment from her. Yeah, those filmed reactions I mentioned, they weren't just for the yucks, they were also for the bucks. But one day, the rich kid decides to step it up a notch. He's willing to fork over a massive sum to this employee if he takes Pomni on a little trip. He knows from his dad that there's a dark, dingy old basement in the company where they keep a lot of junk and old tech and failed prototypes and whatnot. It's basically untouched territory for anyone who's not in the company's upper elite. So he tells the employees to take Pomni into this basement after hours under the guise of completing an errand for work. He's even willing to forge his dad's signature onto some paperwork and loan him a company keycard just to get the job done. He's currently on vacation, so he won't miss it for one night. Just take Pomni through the basement like some kind of haunted house, record her freaked out reactions, maybe throw some of your own spice in there, seal the place up again, and leave before morning. And to sweeten the deal, the more entertaining the video is, the more money will be on the table. The employee obviously can't pass up a deal like that, and so the very next day, he grabs a few of his friends who also enjoy a good prank, and they all tell Pomni about this little errand they have to do. They say that the higher-ups want them to move some old pieces of computer equipment up from the basement and see if they're still operational before work hours start. Like maybe they want to showcase these old unfinished games at some kind of company event or something. He's obviously lying, so he can pretty much make up whatever he wants. Pomni's hesitant at first since it sounds both scary and pretty dang suspicious. but the employee shows her the signed paperwork, the list of confirmed product numbers, and the key card that they were lent by the boss, and so she reluctantly agrees to go along with them. That night, they all wait for the building to completely empty, use the key card to bypass security like the doors and the cameras, and into the bowels of the company they go. The basement is appropriately quiet and creepy, with multiple doors that lead to God knows where. The employees do their best to make the atmosphere even scarier by mysteriously turning on and off all the lights, knocking over a few things and pretending it wasn't them, and recording the whole experience on a little camera that they've hidden on their person. Basically doing exactly what they promised they would. Pomni opens up multiple doors looking for this old equipment they need to grab, and the employees just keep looking at the list and saying, "Nope, not that one. Nope, not that one," just to prolong the experience and get more footage. Eventually, though, they find one particular room that's very offset from the others, being placed at the end of a very long hallway and requiring multiple doors to access. When they enter the room, it's very pitch black, empty, and kinda unnerving. And the only object of interest at all is a small set of crusty yellow computer equipment, including a PC, a monitor, a keyboard, a mouse, and a VR headset. Pomni hesitantly asks if this is some of the equipment they were talking about. At first, the employees are unable to answer at all, being a little afraid themselves. But when they see that this computer apparently comes with a VR game, they come up with the perfect finale to their video that will surely make it a slam dunk. They tell her that, yup, that's what they need, that serial number is right here on the list, so the group hauls the equipment out of the basement and onto one of the office floors so they can plug it in. They craft a little guerrilla-style setup for the computer, like putting the PC on some stacked boxes, grabbing some power strips from the nearby copy machines for electricity, grabbing a table that was probably used to staple papers or something, and even knocking a few things over in the process, causing some papers to spill onto the floor, which they say they'll pick up later. The computer flashes on with a bright white glow and a glitchy but still audible startup sound. And what else do they find on there but the unfinished version of the Amazing Digital Circus? They tell her, well, if that's the only game on this computer, then I guess that's the one they wanted us to test. Let's see if it works. Now, their original plan when they saw this computer was just to have Pomni put on the headset, play whatever VR game was on there if there was one, and then when she least expects it, they do the old grab someone IRL when they're in a VR game jump scare to bring this video to a close. Shoot her nerves to the frickin' moon. But when Pomni slaps the goggles on, well, the game starts buzzing and smoking and making funny noises, and within seconds of the thing being on her noggin, Pomni just kinda flops over in her seat and completely passes out. The other employees panic for a second, thinking they might have killed her or something. They check her vitals and she seems to just be in a coma, but they still have no clue what kind of damage that game might have done to her brain. Do they call an ambulance to pick her up? If something did happen to her, would it be their fault? Would they get fired, go to jail, and get sued for all they're worth? Maybe she's completely fine and she just needs to rest for a little while? The employees start freaking out and figure that the most that they can do is at least leave the building and get Pomni someplace where she can lie down. So they dash out the door with Pomni in tow, closing as many of the doors they open as they can. But in their haste, they completely forgot to dismantle their little computer setup, leaving it in plain view and switched on for the entire night after they left.
I made a boo-boo, yeah.
Meanwhile, in the digital world, Pomni's consciousness gets converted into the merch-moving Jester Babu we all know and love, and she starts having some freak-out sessions of her own, forming mental scars that even a therapist will probably never fix. Anyway, blah blah blah, she meets our main cast, she learns about abstraction, she starts hallucinating in Kinger's little office replica map, witnessing hallways somehow getting longer, and even thinking she sees the exact same computer setup that she used before entering this madhouse. And just as she accepts her fate with a meme-worthy face, morning shines upon the C&A offices. And eventually, the higher-ups, who are the first ones to enter the building, realize that a certain computer they've been keeping under lock and key for years has somehow been retrieved, turned on, and potentially used. The suits are stunned. They don't know what to do. This is the first ever game tester that hasn't been under their surveillance at all. They don't see a body anywhere, so did the user wake up and walk away themselves, or were they not alone? Did someone else witness what this game was capable of? Someone who's actually gonna remember and tell others? They managed to bypass the doors and the cameras, so was it one of their own? Or was a keycard just stolen under their noses? Well, whatever occurred last night, the person or persons responsible aren't there anymore, which means the higher-ups are gonna have to do some detective work to find the culprit, hopefully before any word gets out about what they've been hiding. They put the computer away once again before anyone else shows up, and then ponder what to do next. Meanwhile, the escaped employees bring Pomni to one of their houses and keep an eye on her, hoping that she'll wake up eventually. And when she finally does open her eyes, her body seems 100% fine, but she can't remember a thing about herself or any of them.
Where am I? Who are you guys? I just can't remember.
And that's basically where the story's at right now. Pomni's thoughts and memories are trapped in the circus, the real-life Pomni has a severe case of virtual amnesia, the employees that screwed with her are probably feeling like complete jerks for all they put her through, and the CNA higher-ups are on the hunt for whomever managed to uncover their dirty little digital secret. The first witnesses to ever escape under their watch. Seems like a pretty good setup for the story, and something that can be slowly fed to us as the main plot in the game world unfolds. Now, I'm not gonna go whole hog and write a summary for the entire main series, that would be ludicrous, but I'm not completely done yet. There are still 2 big questions I have yet to answer. How did the other 5 characters enter the game? And will any of them ever be able to make it out? Well, I'm currently juggling answers for both, and I think they'd make for some interesting videos. But before I do anything else, I want to hear what you guys think. What are your theories for how Pomni entered the tent? And would you like to see me craft ideas for the Jester's other 5 roomies? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Before we go, I want to give a huge shout out to my wonderful Patreons, including Supercharged CEO of 9V, Hunter Matzer, Jeffrey Ritter, Anonymous Anomaly, Tigerfire20, Sarah Collins, Michael Wallace, Ian Pendleton, Kelly Dalton, JYoshi64, Angel of Speed, Beanie, William Robertson, and our newest $2 donor, World Binder. If you're interested in the other stuffs I do, like my Patreon, Discord, Twitter, and the like, I've got links to all that and more in the description below. But for now, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I hope to see you all real soon.